and I want to talk about Florida and A&M. But first, I want to talk about Billy Bowman because I hadn't actually thought about this at great length until last night when he announced his decommitment from the University of Texas. And for those of you that don't know, well, you know what? To hell with that. I'm talking to the guy who covers North Texas high school football, like it's his job because it is his job. So, you know what, Colin? I'm going to get out of the way and let you tell us about Billy Bowman.
Dude, he's a freaking stud, man. I watched this guy play on multiple occasions, especially through the Texas high school football playoffs. He was one of the guys that when Denton Ryan ran the throwback starburst trick play on the kickoff return that went absolutely viral on social media, had a key block, a complete knockdown that set that play loose for a score. Billy Bowman is a unique combination of extreme talent and great effort. And he's a guy who's going to immediately elevate both sides of the ball for whichever program takes him. Now, he's obviously displayed the want to play on both sides at the next level. And I think Oklahoma is one of those programs willing to give him that opportunity. That being said, I also like where Oklahoma stands because I always felt like, while he was a very strong Texas commit in the past, having played with a guy like Jatavian Sanders, who I think is still, to this point, very underrated on that Ryan defense and offense. But I think Bowman kind of made a decision for himself and said, look, I really have to explore what I want to do as an individual. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that his girlfriend is an Oklahoma softball player. Bowman, for me, if fans really want to know, is a guy who I would first play at safety and then allow him to ease into it offensive because I think he's a little bit more built to play defensive back at the next level than he is wide receiver, especially maybe in the slot. But he's definitely a guy that could impact all three facets of the game for whichever collegiate program he chooses. And I do think that right now with this decommitment from Texas, Oklahoma is kind of the leader right now. And I would argue, RJ, that this makes this weekend even more interesting. I mean, if Oklahoma is able to look good against Texas and have offensive success, especially with a ton of young players, then maybe that's what really opens Bowman's eyes and helps him maybe pull that trigger. I think, man, he's just been so much fun to cover and watch. I hope to get out to another Denton Ryan game here very soon this season. Obviously, I'm hitting like 4 games this week, but there's a reason I'm going to be going out and to see 2 or 3 of his this season because not only is he going to be a priority for Oklahoma, but he's easily one of the best players that Texas high school football has to offer.
For those that don't know, Billy is one of the highest rated 4-stars in the 247 Sports Composite at number 33, just outside of 5-star status. Number 3 athlete in the country, number 6 player in the state of Texas. And I look at him like you might look at Jabril Peppers at Michigan, and for you old heads, perhaps like an Antonio Perkins or even an Andre Woolfolk, the kind of dude that you could see on either side of the football like Woolfolk, and I believe could be a dynamic punt returner, kick returner, all of those things. So much so that you kind of want to see him with the ball in his hands more often than you want to see him play in safety, but knowing what Oklahoma has been defensively, particularly at safety over the past 10 years, being able to land a guy like Billy Bowman is program changing in the same way that if Oklahoma had landed Josh Proctor, it would have been program changing. If they would have landed Dax Hill, it would have been program changing. I believe that Kendall Daniels would have been program changing. Like, his commitment is still ongoing, but he's solid to Texas A&M. Point here is, at one point, it did not feel like Billy Bowman was actually going to be in play. I even talked with Caleb Williams about this for a little bit because this is a guy that he's had his eye on. And, you know, this rumor about not rumor, but this gossip about his girlfriend playing softball at Oklahoma, I'm going, guys, that only goes so far for me. Like, this dude wants to play in the NFL, okay? Now, there's an argument against playing at Texas, right? But there's not an argument for playing it at Oklahoma. You know, like, that's the issue here. That's what I find to be wild is he's basically in what Oklahoma calls home base, right? North Texas. And Oklahoma recruits the hell out of it in that Dallas area. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at Billy Bowman, I honestly wonder why he's not looking at Ohio State or an SEC school or Clemson, right? Because those are the places where guys that play his position get drafted highly. So, like, Do you understand why I'm skeptical that he ends up picking one, Oklahoma, and two, if he does decide to pick between the two, that he recommits to Texas, a la Theo Weiss, a couple years back, right? He was committed to Oklahoma, reopened his recruitment, and then ended up committing and signing Oklahoma. Now he's playing white out there. I got to see more moving and shaking, especially at this time when nobody can take visits, right? And we're seeing how much it matters that the kids get to visit and get like physical FaceTime with these coaches. I'm not even going to be cautiously optimistic about Billy Bowman. I'm just going to say that, yo, man, he ain't signed up to go to a Texas program where he has to help rebuild it. Like, it's the same thing I thought about with Jalen Milroe when he flipped his commitment from Texas to Alabama. It's like, nah, man. Like, I would rather go to Apple where they're just cranking them out as opposed to trying to restart Microsoft or even make Linux the most valued word processing program that there, like, or I should say operating program that there is. I just don't see it. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, and here's what's interesting. First off, it is of note that Bowman does have an Alabama offer himself. So
See?
don't rule that, especially with Carl Scott.
Jordan battle anyone.
Woo, I'm telling you, keep an eye out on the Crimson Tide if they press the gas. Here's what I would say, though, RJ, and it's interesting because you mentioned the visit aspect of this and how he's not going to be able to go to specific sites. I would argue that actually plays into Oklahoma's favor based purely on relationships. Everyone at home has to remember Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, Roy Manning, all of these coaches have been relentlessly recruiting this guy throughout the entire process, even if he's been committed to Texas for so long. Then you also have to keep in mind, if he can't go other places and see what other places have to offer, he does know that, even though we don't want to value it too much, he'll have an opportunity to be with his significant other at the collegiate level if he were to go to Oklahoma. So there are people that he knows in Norman, and he understands what that program is about. If he's not able to grasp a further understanding of other programs because of that lack of visitation, I would then argue that maybe these relationships and those recruiting restrictions actually boost Oklahoma above other contenders at this stage because they just need to get him on campus. I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with you. If a legitimate collegiate defense and program pitches to him the proper kind of pitch, he would easily swing, in my opinion, to other directions. But right now, the place he's most familiar with is none other than Oklahoma, and he can't go familiarize himself with other locations. I don't see how Oklahoma could take too much of a step back at this stage. Granted, things are likely to change, but at the same time, in this current present, I would again say Oklahoma is sitting pretty right now.
All right. I mean, I will certainly keep an eye on it like you will keep an eye on it because, I mean, how can you not? He's an outstanding talent. Yeah. I really enjoy watching him play ball, and I'll be interested to see.
Early.
What's up?
I'm just saying it's early. We're going to follow this.
Yeah. I mean, I also need to add in here, Sage Ryan is, we think, an LSU lean, so he fills their safety vacancy, right? We just saw Andrew Makuba fill Clemson's safety vacancy, right? So, yeah, it might be just process of elimination after a while, but I got to believe Alabama might make a play, and if they do, it's really difficult to beat Nick Saban if he gets on the FaceTime with the kiddos. Like, he's been just outstanding here in the last 6 months. I thought that perhaps, the technology was going to outpace one Nick Saban, and Nick Saban said, nah. Speaking of Nick